Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center for Spiritual Living Victoria Online. My name is Carrie Hunter, and I'm the Senior Minister at the CSL in Victoria. And it's lovely to have you here with me today. As I'm recording this, it is Sunday afternoon, and we've already had our morning service, which happens at 380 Cook Street in Victoria at the Cook Street Village Activity Center. And we'd love to see you there in person some Sunday if you'd like to drop by. So last week, if you watched my talk last week, I was talking about a new book that I'm reading and that from which I'm taking a lot of material, and it's a book that I really, really love. It's called The Time Is Now, A Call to Uncommon Courage. And it's written by Sister Joan Chittister, who is truly a remarkable person. She's an 82-year-old nun. This is her 50th book, and I would call her a very enlightened being. She goes beyond the ordinary dogma of many religions, and I would say is a completely mature spiritual person. She asks the tough questions, and she really urges us to become better than we are. And her call in the book is for us to become prophets. And I kind of wondered what that meant as I began to read the book, because to me, I was thinking of people like Moses and Abraham, and so on. And that's not what she meant at all. What she meant was for us to become true believers, not just to pay lip service to believing, but to be true believers. And by that, I mean believing in a God that we can understand, believing in this presence within that is within each and every one of us that binds us one to the other. And I call it God. In our teaching, we call it God, but you can call it anything that you want. You can call it the universe, you can call it intelligence, you can call it creator, you can call it the source. It doesn't matter which. The thing is that we are called upon to absolutely believe in that enormous power that is so much greater than we are, that makes us greater than we think we might ever be, and to use it for good in our lives and for in this world. And Sister Joan says that this is a call to not just to pray and to meditate, but to take action, to look at what is going wrong in our world and in the world as a whole, and to ask ourselves, what can we do? What must I do? What is mine to do? To ask God's Spirit, what is mine to do? And last week I mentioned, so what is this God, or who is this God anyway? And the thing is, this God is all there is. And it's not some old man in the sky who's wearing a pink nightie and sitting on a cloud and judging us, who's going to punish us, send us to hell, burn us for eternity if we sin. Did you know that the word sin comes from a Greek word meaning missing the mark? And to repent means to try again. That's very different from the Christian tradition in which many of us were brought up. I know I certainly was, until I found a God that I could understand. And last week I talked about this God that is in our teaching. Our teaching is called Science of Mind. Ernest Holmes, the founder, called himself a Christian, and I call myself a New Thought Christian. And what that means is that we've moved beyond the old ideas, the things that made no sense at all, into a loving, compassionate, wise God, creative God that lives in each of us. It was there before we were born, and certainly followed us afterward, and is still there no matter what. The thing is that we don't always know how to use it for good. And so if we're really positive thinkers, if we have passion for good things in our lives, then those good things will appear. If we have passion for negative things, thinking that life is never going to change, it won't change. We'll just have more of the same. And if we're neutral, it will be neutral. The thing is that we have the power to use it. And we use it by already visualizing what it is that we want to create in our lives, by seeing that image, and by putting power and passion behind that image. What does it feel like? What does it look like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What is it like to live in that life? And when we do that, it only knows to create. And so in our faith, God is not a him or a her, a he or a she. God is an it. God is the creative power of the universe. And I'm not talking about a God that created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and then took a day off and rested. That's not at all what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a God that is both spiritual and scientific. You know, to say this earth was created by God, by the Big Bang Theory, that is scientific. And Ernest Holmes, our founder, on the very first page of our textbook, says he looks forward to the day when science and religion walk hand in hand. That was written in 1926, and this is the day. He didn't live to see it, although he was certainly a proponent of it, and he had colleagues who were teaching the same things. But we now have more and more people who really understand what it is and understand how it works. And so it's important for us to remember that. It's important for us to remember that we have the power. And also it's important for us to remember that, you know, we carry memories with us. We carry ideas about who we are, whether we're good, bad, or indifferent. What is important in our lives, or what is according to what we've been taught, what we've been told when we were very, very young. And we didn't have the information to discern what was true and what wasn't. And this was driven home for me many, many years ago, and I was thinking about it again today, about how in infancy we can be taught and we can retain things that we would never dream that we could. When my first daughter was born, she was born just a couple of weeks before Christmas. And when I brought her home from the hospital, we had our Christmas tree up and it was all alight. And at night, I used to sit beside the Christmas tree with the lights on, and I used to rock her in my arms and sing to her. And the song that I really loved at that time was a Harry Belafonte song called Scarlet Ribbons. It just seemed like such a sweet thing to sing as a lullaby. So I used to sing that to her every night until after Christmas when we took the tree down. I might have sung it afterward, but the pivotal point really was in that first 2 weeks. And the reason is that a month before she was 2 years old, we were making our descent over Manhattan. We were stopping off in New York before going on to the British West Indies. And as we were, it was nighttime, and as we were flying over New York, there were all these beautiful lights down below, the lights of the cities. And our daughter looked out the window and she looked at me and she said, "Look, Mom, scarlet ribbons." And I looked and I saw all the colored lights. And then it occurred to me that when she was just days old and I was sitting by the Christmas tree singing to her, she equated Christmas lights with the word scarlet ribbons. This is a baby just days old. And in her mind, scarlet ribbons were beautiful colored lights like those on the Christmas tree. Well, just imagine if a baby just days old retains that memory and then translates it into something else, something that he or she thinks it is. It's remarkable. And the thing is, we all did things like that. We all accepted certain things as being real. They were real to us when we were infants, when we were tiny babies, and when we were young children. And well-meaning people taught us. They taught us their own beliefs. They taught us what to look out for. They taught us to be afraid or to be courageous. We learned many, many lessons from them. And those are the things that really stuck that we have forgotten about until we look at our lives and see what it is we're creating. What made us create those things? What is working now that's creating a life that maybe isn't exactly the way I want it? What did I learn? What was I told as a child, as a young adult? What was I told when I first started to work for a living? You know, who were the people around me who influenced me? These are questions that it's important to ask. And Sister Joan tells us all to be prophets. meaning that we are all believers. We all believe in this power, in this presence. We believe that we are here to make a difference. And we need to look at our belief systems and see exactly what they are. And then to see what we can do to make a difference in this world. And I read a little bit from the book last week. I'm going to read a few paragraphs again today. So bear with me here while I get the book open. If there's anything about the prophetic dimension of life that is clear, it is surely this: more people decline to accept their appointment here on earth, than to embrace it. As much as the church across time has recognized the role of the prophets as charismatic carriers of the word of God for humanity, as much as prophets and religious groups have left behind them models and ministries enough to rebuild the world from century to century, an old heresy remains: the struggle to escape the world, to avoid conflict, and to let things take care of themselves. And it stays strong in us. These things stay strong in us, just like scarlet ribbons in my daughter. We have lost the holy gift of awareness of the world's needs that the prophets brought to fullness. We have overlooked what the prophets knew best. The time most germane to our own satisfaction is now. Here and now. This is the time. What we do and say and see and respond to in our own day is the real seed of our own holy expression. It is the times we live in where we are called to courage. No doubt about it. The purpose of believing is to leaven the world, to lighten it, to bring it closer to spirit, one small step at a time. The quality of the life we create around us is meant to seed new life, new hope, new dynamism, and the very essence of a new world community. No exception is made for anyone. None of us, however isolated from the rest of life, is forgiven the responsibility. But how can it possibly be done by busy people with family and professional lives to live? The truth is that it's not that difficult. The question is, exactly what is it that it will take? And certainly it takes a lot of belief. And when we believe, when we truly believe, when we know the presence, and for me, that means that I can feel this warmth in my heart when I check in with prayer or meditation or just contemplate God. And I love that feeling, but that's the place where miracles take place, from that feeling nature and from the images that we carry with us. And so we need to ask ourselves, what is the image now? What is it that I really want to see in this world? How am I going to create it? What is it that I'm going to do? And I was thinking about this yesterday. One of my all-time favorite stories is an example of how we do this. It's the story of Isaac Perlman, one of the world's greatest violinists, who is now, I think, 77 years old and still playing. And in November 25th of 1995, he played a concert in Avery Fisher Concert Hall in the Lincoln Center in New York City. And if you know anything about him, you know that he had polio as a child. And as an adult, he wears braces on both legs and walks with crutches. And that night, Isaac Perlman walked out onto the stage ever so slowly and with great difficulty. And when he got to his chair, he sat down and he laboriously removed the braces from his legs and put them down, put them out of the way, put his crutches down. And he picked up his violin. And when he was ready, he signaled to the orchestra to start playing. And they had only played a few bars when there was this enormous sound that it sounded like a shot startled everyone. The acoustics in that concert hall are so amazing that, people thought it was actually a gunshot. But Isaac Perlman stopped playing. He stopped the orchestra from playing. And he sat there for a moment, and everybody was alarmed, and what they were thinking was, oh no, he has to put the braces back on, pick up his crutches, he has to get his Stradivarius backstage, he has to get off the stage, he has to restring the violin, has to test it, has to come back out again, has to go through that whole procedure again. But he sat there for a moment, and then he smiled, and he nodded at the orchestra to go ahead. And so with one missing string, he played. And critics said that it was the most magnificent performance of his life, the greatest music they had ever heard. And when he finished, people leapt to their feet. They cheered, they whistled, they shouted. And he sat there in his chair. It was very quiet. And when they quieted down, he said, sometimes an artist has to test things. Sometimes an artist has to give the best that he can with what he has left. And he said, that's what happened tonight. I gave the best that I could with what I had left. That particular story, that line, the best that I can give with what I have left, has stayed with me through the years. I love it. I cleave it to my heart. I ask myself that question regularly. What can I do with what I have left? The thing is, playing on one string can be better than playing on all strings. When we challenge ourselves, when we recognize the truth of who we are, that we are spirit, having a human experience, that we are God itself in expression, it lives, moves, and has its being through every one of us, and we all have equal amounts of it. It's very democratic. Mother Teresa, Jesus, didn't have more of it than we have. It's just, we're not aware. We're not aware of how powerful we are. We're not aware of everything that we can do with this power. And Isaac Perlman, to me, is a reminder of what we can do, even when we feel we don't have enough. We use everything that we have that's left. Sister Joan challenges us. She challenges us to be spiritually mature, to be bigger than ourselves, to be greater than we think that we are, greater than we think we could ever be, because that greatness lives within us. And she charges us to think, to really think, and to understand. And as I was reading that, I was thinking about it as I was driving to church this morning. And I was thinking about, I looked at my gas tank, which needed filling. And I thought, well, I have to do that after church because I don't have time before. But I was remembering listening to some political pundits a couple of weeks ago, and something that one of them said really, really shook me for a moment, made me wake up. Because, when people were complaining about the price of gas, and I mean, for me, because of the distance that I travel and the things that I do, my gas costs me about $200 a month, and it used to cost me about $75. And when people complain about it, I say, but the thing is, there's a supply shortage. Part of this has to do with the war in Ukraine. The supply from the Soviet Union has been cut off. And I said, I am more than willing to pay more for my gasoline because of what's happened in the Ukraine, because of that war. I'm more than happy to do that as my little bit in the war, to see that supply chain is less than it was, to enable the Ukrainians to defend themselves and to defend their democracy. And I was talking to Reverend Jennifer, who's one of the wonderful ministers at our center. She and I get together for brunch or lunch periodically. And, I said, I recognize that we're actually in World War III because so many countries in the world are supporting the Ukraine with artillery, with, with all of the equipments of war that are required, with money, with what they need to keep on fighting. And bit by bit, they are winning at great loss to their people, and great courage that they're displaying. And, we talked about that and kind of agreed on it. We didn't get into a serious, heavy discussion about it, but it was just one of those passing thoughts, with all these countries involved, one way or another, sending tanks, sending all of the modern kinds of warfare to the Ukraine. We're all in it one way or another. Anyway, back to the pundits who were speaking. And one of them on the panel was a Republican. And I have seen him on television, and, I haven't agreed with a lot of things that he'd said, but he stopped me in my tracks that day as he spoke. And he said, the Ukrainians are fighting our war. They're fighting our war with Russia. And he said, not one American soldier has been killed. And I went, wow. That was taking my thinking about the price of gas and that we're already into a world war to a whole new level. Fighting our war. This was an American speaking. Fighting our war in Canada, because we are involved as well in sending money and munitions to the Ukraine. This is the kind of thing that Sister Joan is asking us to do, which happened to me just kind of coincidentally, if there is such a thing as coincidence, because I hadn't taken it to that next step, that they are fighting our war for us. And so she's asking us to think things through, whatever it is that we might be critical of, whatever we're seeing around us, to think it through. Why is it happening? And is there anything we can do about it? What about the people who are living on the street? Why are they there? What can we do about it? What happens when public transportation is removed from outlying areas because it becomes too expensive with inflation for them to operate? And then people who don't have cars can't make it to work and they become unemployed. Taking it to yet another level. What about students who are so much in debt with student loans? Why can't their education be free? That's the best investment we can make in our youth, as far as I'm concerned. These young people who are coming out of university with massive debt, it's a huge stress on them. And they can't declare bankruptcy and get rid of it. That's one thing they can't declare bankruptcy about. They've just got to pay it off. And there are many people who have huge debts, hundreds of thousands of dollars, because of the training that they've taken. And they don't know if they're ever going to see light. They take a job that's well-paying, and a lot of their money goes to be paying off student debt. We need to be looking at these things and saying, what's really right here? Because we are so enamored with or so controlled by big businesses. And I don't have a thing about big businesses. I mean, we need a lot of them. There are many that I would like to see go, but we do need a lot of them. We need businesses. We need people of every walk in life to have small businesses or medium-sized businesses. We couldn't function without those things. But there are places where things could be different. And what about the tax structure, where big businesses are not paying any taxes at all, while little guys are paying more than, they're paying what is considered their fair share by governments, but not by many of the people. I mean, we need to really look at these things and not just say, oh, that's just the way it is, can't do anything about it. Somebody's going to have to change that, but I don't know if it's ever going to happen. That's not what we're called to do. We're called to examine these things carefully and thoroughly, and then ask God, what is mine to do? What would you have me do today? and to listen. You know, I call prayer talking to God, and meditation listening to God. That's where we get many answers. And I think it's so important for us to do that. And the thing is, you know, last week I was suggesting that we can all do something. And we can all do something. There are a lot of people who've been doing things all their lives. They've worked in the streets with people who need their help. They've worked as volunteers in so many organizations doing so many good works, and they might be tired. And if that's the case, if you don't feel called to continue to do these things, but you do want to do something, then writing letters to our governments, starting petitions, doing things that don't require huge amounts of work are things that we can all do. That's how we can support those who are out there in the field really working at these things. And so we need to, as Sister Joan said, we need to stop living behind a life of prayer. And I went, what? Stop living behind a life of prayer? I mean, this is what I'm talking about every week, is to live behind a life of prayer. But what she meant was kind of hiding behind it, saying, well, I pray, that's, you know, that's everything. I don't need to get involved in any other way. We have an expression in our teaching, treat and move your feet, or pray and move your feet. Don't just sit around waiting for somebody else to do it. Get involved. And there's something that each of us can do, no matter how big or how small, because there is no big and no small in the mind of God. Everything just is. And we need to know what it is that we're called to do. You know, Science of Mind, the textbook, just brings us to a deeper connection, or studying Science of Mind brings us to a deeper connection. I know whenever I pick up my worn out textbook, I feel that. I'm just enamored with it. To me, it's a holy book. The newer versions that I have don't feel as holy, I think, because they're not, you know, they're not so tactile. I haven't held them in my hands for so many hours and days and weeks and years. And when I pick up the old one, I have notes scribbled all the way through it. And I opened it up the other day, and the first thing that I looked at that I'd scribbled was spirit plus nothing equals spirit. And I was thinking about creation again. You know, at some point, all there was this vast sea of intelligence. Nothing else existed, just intelligence. So it was not this vast sea of nothing. It was this vast sea of whatever we want to call God. And then through science, the universe was created with a big bang. And I'm not going to get into the whole theory of that as I speak to you today. The thing that we need to remember is that we are living an inner life. You know, we are pioneers of inner space. For a long time now, we have honored Newtonian physics, you know, the external world, the things that we can see, feel, touch. And that's still important. But we've moved into the quantum age. We've moved into the age of quantum physics, where we actually can prove that our thoughts create form. And that is so exciting to think about. It's so exciting to remember. But it also challenges us to be careful what we think, to really work upon what it is that we put in our minds. You know, spirit plus nothing equals spirit. Reminded me of my younger daughter when she was 2, and she used to come out with the strangest things. And one of the first things I remember her saying is, you know, if I were falling through space, something would be touching me, because space is something. And then she said, what's the other thing? Even when I'm doing nothing, I'm doing something, because nothing is something. You know, she was way ahead of me. I looked at her and I thought, oh my God, I've got one of those in the family. How am I going to deal with this? You know, we all have this intelligence and wisdom within us. Somewhere along the way, it may have got shut down. But this is the time. The time is now to renew that, to really remember who we are and to use that power. I'm going to close with another short, very short reading of Sister Jones, and it's called Reflection. Maybe we should start by writing instructions on every church wall. Pay attention, be astonished, talk about it. And I was saying to our group this morning, you know, go and tell everybody about this cool group of people that you get together with on Sundays and the way that they think and the positive way that they live their lives. So write it on every church wall. And then we might be alert enough to notice when the first refugees are sent away, when the first inner city schools are closed, when the first suburban bus routes are removed, making it impossible for poorer people to get to work outside the inner city. Maybe we could even start telling people about it who do have the power to change things. Then, surprisingly, we could take our own place among the prophets of our time. Thomas Merton wrote, "The whole idea of compassion is based on a keen awareness of the interdependence of all these living beings, which are all part of one another and all involved in one another." We are all involved in one another, no matter what our station in life, no matter what our experiences are. We are all one because we are all spirit. There is no separation where spirit is, because spirit is everything. We are individualized as containers of God's stuff. Let's think about that the coming week. Think about what it is that is ours to do. And go into the silence and listen. Listen for the answers. When we're still, when we're quiet, they will come. And so it is. Have a great week, everybody, and I look forward to seeing you again. By the way, very soon we're going to start live streaming our services. We did a test run today, and as soon as we do start live streaming, we will let you know, because you'll get a complete service when that happens, with all of the music and all of the wonderful things that go on. We will not be able to record them because of copyright issues with music, but we will be able to bring you the services live on Sunday mornings if you're not able to make it there yourselves. So stay tuned. We'll let you know when it happens. Have a great week, and so it is.